Emily Carter moved through her life like someone walking inside a quiet room, afraid to make noise. Her marriage to Michael had become a pattern of routines, unchanged for years. They lived in a small house in Seattle, where every morning felt the same: coffee at 7, breakfast in silence, a quick goodbye, and two people drifting through their own separate worlds. They weren't unhappy in any dramatic way. They were simply distant, like two boats moving in opposite directions without realizing it. Emily often felt invisible, without fully understanding why. She wasn't searching for anything dangerous or complicated. She only wanted to feel something warm again, something that reminded her she was alive. Her life had become a checklist, and she followed it faithfully because she believed that was what marriage needed. Stability, not excitement. That stability can sometimes turn into stillness, and stillness can feel like loneliness. That one cold autumn morning, when the sky was bright, but the air sharp, Emily was cleaning the small kitchen counter when her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, assuming it was a reminder or a message about work. Instead, she saw a name she hadn't seen in years: Daniel Hayes. They had been close friends in college, the kind of friendship built on easy laughter and shared late-night conversations about life. She remembered him as energetic, thoughtful, always ready for an adventure. He had moved away shortly after graduation, and life simply carried them apart. Her heart lifted in a way she didn't expect. She opened the message. "I'm back in Seattle. A few of us are planning a short weekend hike. You should come. It's been too long." Her first reaction was a quiet smile. Her second reaction was hesitation. She knew what Michael would say. He didn't enjoy unplanned things. He liked everything organized, prepared, and calm. A hike with old friends would be labeled unnecessary, tiring, or even childish. He would question why she wanted to go. He would explain how weekends were for resting at home. And she would nod, agreeing out of habit, not desire. But something inside her stirred. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't romantic excitement. It was something more basic: longing for a moment where life felt less heavy. She couldn't remember the last time she had done something just because it sounded fun. She couldn't remember the last time she felt laughter rise easily in her chest. She sat at the small wooden table, staring at the message as sunlight stretched across the floor. It was such a simple invitation, yet it felt like a door opening to a memory she had forgotten. For years, Emily had made choices based only on what fit their schedule, what kept peace, what didn't interrupt the quiet routine. She rarely chose something for herself, not because she was restricted, but because she had slowly stopped believing her needs mattered. Her mind raced through possible outcomes. If she said yes, Michael would be annoyed. If she said no, she would spend another weekend folding laundry, cooking dinner, watching him scroll through news channels, and pretending that the small ache inside her chest was normal. She didn't blame him. Michael wasn't unkind. He was simply used to comfort. He didn't chase moments, he maintained them. But Emily needed a breath of fresh air. She needed to feel movement in her life again. For once, she didn't overthink. She didn't type and delete, didn't second-guess her emotions. She simply wrote back, "I'll come. Thank you for inviting me." Her hands shook slightly as she pressed send. Not out of fear, but out of realization. She had just done something for herself. Something simple yet unfamiliar, like stepping into sunlight after standing in shade for too long. A moment later, Daniel replied with a cheerful message filled with enthusiasm. He sounded exactly like the person she remembered: warm, open, easy. She felt a quick surge of excitement, the kind that wasn't romantic but comforting, like reconnecting with a forgotten part of herself. When Michael came home that evening, she mentioned the hike briefly. His reaction was predictable: a small sigh, a quiet pause, and a gentle reminder that weekends were for rest. But Emily didn't argue or defend herself. She simply smiled and said she needed a change of scenery. Michael didn't protest further. He wasn't controlling. He just didn't understand the kind of emptiness she had been carrying. That night, Emily lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling something she hadn't felt in years' anticipation. She didn't expect anything dramatic from the hike. She didn't expect life to shift in an instant. She only hoped to breathe easier, laugh once or twice, and remember a version of herself that wasn't defined by routine. The next morning, she woke up with a lighter heart. She packed a small backpack, tied her hair back, and left the house early. The sky was clear, the air crisp, and the world felt wider than it had in a long time. Emily didn't know it yet, but the simple decision to say yes would become the beginning of a change she never expected one, that would force her to look closely at her life, her marriage, and the woman she used to be. The hike hadn't even begun, but something inside her had already started to move. Emily reached the trail early, the morning air cool against her cheeks. For a moment she wondered if she had made the right choice. She wasn't used to doing things on her own, and a small part of her feared she wouldn't fit in anymore. But the sound of voices and laughter in the distance pulled her forward. When she turned the corner, she saw Daniel waving at her with the same warm grin she remembered from years ago. It was strangely comforting, like meeting a familiar piece of her past. "Emily, you made it," he said, hugging her briefly before introducing her to the group. Everyone welcomed her with easy smiles. They were a mix of old friends from college and people Daniel had met through work, friendly, relaxed, open. There was no pressure, no awkwardness, no judgment. The group quickly began walking, and Emily found herself sliding into conversation as naturally as breathing. The trail curved through a forest of tall, golden trees. Leaves fell softly around them, turning the ground into a warm carpet of color. Emily felt a surprising sense of peace. She hadn't realized how much she missed the outdoors, the sound of wind moving through branches, the feeling of dirt under her shoes. Life in the city had slowly closed her world into small rooms and small moments. This hike felt like someone had quietly opened a window door as they walked. Daniel drifted beside her. They talked with ease, like the years between them had simply folded away. He asked about her work, her hobbies, her life. He didn't pry. He listened. It was a rare feeling, one she hadn't experienced in a long time. With Michael, conversations had become practical bills, appointments, groceries. This was different. Daniel talked about books he had read, places he wanted to travel, things he still wanted to do. His enthusiasm made her smile without effort. At one point, he looked at her closely. "You seem quieter than before," he said gently. "I guess life became a little too predictable," she admitted. "Predictable is fine," he replied with a soft shrug. "As long as you're not losing yourself in it." His words stayed with her. She didn't respond, but inside she felt something shift. The group reached a clearing near a lake. The water sparkled under the sun, and the wind formed tiny ripples along the surface. Everyone dropped their backpacks and settled down, pulling out snacks and water bottles. Someone suggested skipping stones. Another person pulled out a camera. The atmosphere was light, playful, and warm. Emily sat on a rock near the edge of the lake, just watching the sunlight dance over the water. She felt peaceful in a way she hadn't felt for years. Daniel sat beside her, nudging her shoulder lightly. "Try skipping a stone," he said. She laughed. "I was never good at it." "Then today's the day you get better." He showed her how to hold the stone, how to angle her wrist. She tossed it clumsily, and it sank instantly. Daniel laughed without mocking her, and she laughed too, surprised by how natural it felt. She tried again, and the stone bounced once before disappearing. It wasn't a great throw, but it felt like an achievement. Moments like that simple, small, ordinary filled her with warmth she didn't expect. She wasn't falling for Daniel. She wasn't seeking anything romantic. What she was feeling was relief, a reminder that life could still hold lightness and joy if she allowed herself to reach for it. The group soon unpacked sandwiches, shared stories, and took pictures together. Emily found herself joining the laughter instead of just observing it. She felt included, seen, and appreciated. No one asked why she seemed quiet or distant. They simply welcomed her as she was. After resting, the group continued the hike along a narrow path overlooking the lake. The view was stunning: wide open skies, shimmering water, and mountains standing like calm guardians in the distance. Emily breathed in deeply, realizing how long it had been since she felt connected to something bigger than her daily routine. Daniel walked beside her again, his tone softer now. "I'm really glad you came today. You look happier." "I feel lighter," she admitted honestly. "You deserve that," he said simply. His words weren't flirtatious. They were sincere and kind, spoken by someone who cared about her well-being without wanting anything in return. That sincerity touched her in a deep, quiet way. As the group returned to the starting point in the late afternoon, Emily felt a gentle ache in her chest. Not sadness, but awareness. She had spent hours laughing, breathing fresh air, and remembering parts of herself she had forgotten. It made her wonder how long she had been moving through life without truly living it. When the hike ended, everyone exchanged phone numbers and promised to meet again. Daniel walked her to her car. "Don't disappear this time," he said with a playful smile. "I won't," she replied, surprised by how true it felt. On her drive home, the city lights slowly replaced the golden glow of the forest. The closer she got to her neighborhood, the heavier her heart became. She knew Michael wouldn't understand the kind of happiness she felt that day. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't see life the way she did. That thought stayed with her long after she parked the car. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt alive, and she didn't know how to carry that feeling back into a marriage that had forgotten what joy looked like. When Emily reached home after the hike, the streetlights were glowing softly, and the air had turned colder. The warmth she felt all day began to fade as soon as she stepped into the quiet house. Michael was on the couch, watching the evening news, his face lit by the blue light of the TV. He didn't look up right away. It was the same scene she had walked into for years, yet tonight it felt unfamiliar. "You're late," he finally said, his eyes still focused on the screen. His voice wasn't angry, just tired, like someone reading a line he had memorized long ago. "I told you I was going hiking," she replied gently as she set her backpack down. "You could have texted again. I didn't know you'd be gone this long." His words carried no real concern, only mild annoyance. Emily felt something inside her tighten, not anger, but a quiet sadness that pressed against her ribs. She had spent the whole day laughing, breathing fresh air, remembering life. Now the silence in the room felt heavier than ever. "I was with friends," she said softly. "It took longer than expected." Michael nodded without replying, already slipping back into the comfort of his routine. The TV volume filled the space between them, louder than their connection had been in years. Emily stood there for a moment, unsure whether to sit, talk, or walk away. She chose the kitchen, needing a moment alone. She turned on the small counter light and poured herself a glass of water. Her reflection in the dark kitchen window surprised her. She looked brighter, almost younger, as if the day had added something back into her life. That the house felt too still, too cold. The contrast of her joy and the quiet around her made the distance between her and Michael painfully clear. She returned to the living room and sat on the other end of the couch. The space between them felt like a wall. She watched him flip channels without noticing her expression, or the way her hands trembled slightly from leftover excitement and creeping disappointment. "Michael," she said carefully, "do you ever think we've stopped living?" He paused, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, everything feels the same. Every day. We sit in silence. We don't do things together. We don't laugh. We don't talk. It feels like we're just passing time." Michael frowned, not in anger but confusion, as if she had spoken a language he didn't understand. "Life is fine, Emily. We're comfortable. Isn't that enough?" Comfortable. The word felt small. "I think I forgot how it feels to enjoy something," she said, her voice trembling in a way she didn't expect. "Today reminded me." Michael shifted, uncomfortable. "It was just a hike." She looked at him closely, realizing the ache inside her wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he didn't notice. He didn't see how much she needed to feel present again, how long she had been drifting. "Maybe for you," she whispered. "But it meant something to me." Michael sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Emily, I don't know what you want me to say. I work. I come home. We live peacefully. Isn't that what people want? A quiet life?" She wanted to tell him that quiet wasn't the problem. The problem was the emptiness inside it. But she knew saying it wouldn't change anything tonight. She stood up, feeling a weight settle over her heart. "I'm going to shower," she said quietly in the bathroom. The warm water ran over her skin, but it didn't wash away the ache. How had she gone so long without noticing she was lonely? Not lonely for another person, for herself. She missed the version of her who laughed easily, who explored, who didn't feel like she needed permission to enjoy life. After her shower, she sat on the edge of the bed in fresh clothes, her hair damp and her thoughts loud. Her phone buzzed with a message. She hesitated before checking it. It was Daniel. "Today was great. You looked happy. I hope you had a good time." The simple message made her breath catch. Not because it came from Daniel, but because it reflected something important. Someone had noticed her happiness. Someone had seen her, noticed her smile, felt her excitement. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Michael hadn't asked about her day. He hadn't noticed her mood. He didn't even see the way she walked around the house lighter than usual. Daniel wasn't the reason she felt emotional. It was the contrast he represented. With him, she felt visible. With Michael, she felt like a quiet shape in the background of her own life. She typed a simple reply. "Thank you. I really needed today." Then she set her phone down and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Tears didn't come, but the pressure behind her eyes told her they could. She wasn't crying for Daniel, or even for Michael. She was crying for herself, for the years she had spent shrinking inside a routine that no longer fed her spirit. As the house settled into its usual night silence, Emily realized something had changed inside her. She could no longer pretend she was fine. She couldn't go back to being invisible in her own life. Something had cracked open, and now she had to decide what to do with the light coming through. The next few days passed in a quiet blur for Emily. She moved through the house like someone balancing two different worlds, one filled with the fresh energy she had felt on the hike, and the other filled with the quiet routines of her marriage. Every morning she woke with a strange mixture of hope and heaviness. She still cared about Michael, and she didn't want to hurt him, but she couldn't ignore the truth rising inside her. Something had to change. On the third day, Daniel texted again. He asked if she wanted to join him for coffee at a small cafe by the bay. Nothing fancy, just a peaceful place to sit. Emily hesitated only for a moment before agreeing. She wasn't chasing anything romantic. She wasn't looking for escape. She simply needed space to think, to breathe, to understand what she was feeling. The cafe was quiet, with large windows overlooking the water. When she walked inside, Daniel was already there, waving with the same warm smile he always carried. He stood up as she approached, his presence calm and grounding. "You look tired," he said gently, not judging her, not pushing, just noticing. "It's been a lot," she admitted, taking a seat. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup of coffee, letting the heat steady her. They talked for a while about simple things: work, the weather, old memories. But eventually, Daniel leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Are you okay? You don't have to tell me everything. I just care." Emily took a breath, steady but honest. "I realized I've been living my life on pause. I didn't see it until the hike. I thought I was fine. I thought being comfortable was enough. But now I feel like I've missed years of myself." Daniel nodded slowly. "Sometimes life becomes so quiet we stop hearing ourselves." His words were gentle, but they struck deep. She wasn't hurt by him. She wasn't confused by him. Instead, she felt seen in a way she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. "I'm not unhappy with Michael," she said, almost defending her marriage. "We're just stuck." "Being stuck doesn't mean you have to stay stuck," Daniel replied softly. Emily didn't answer, but her heart trembled at the truth in his voice. After they finished their coffee, Daniel walked her outside. The breeze carried the smell of salt from the bay, and seagulls circled above them. Emily felt a moment of peace, a rare, fragile moment where the noise in her mind quieted. Before they parted, Daniel said, "Whatever you choose to do, I hope it brings you joy." "You deserve that." Emily nodded, grateful. He wasn't asking her for anything. He wasn't trying to replace anyone. He was simply holding space for her, something she hadn't realized she needed so badly. When she returned home, the house felt too quiet again. Michael was in the kitchen heating leftovers. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. "Where were you?" he asked, not harshly but with mild confusion. "I went for coffee," she said simply. "With who?" "A friend." Michael's expression shifted, confusion, then uncertainty. He set down the plate. "Emily, is something going on?" She sat at the table, folding her hands together. Her voice was steady, not angry, not emotional, just honest. "Yes, something is going on. With me." He sat across from her, finally fully looking at her. "Tell me." For the first time in years, Emily felt he was ready to listen. Not dismiss, not minimize, listen. "I feel like we stopped trying," she said. "We stopped talking about dreams. We stopped doing things together. I feel lonely, even when we're in the same room. And I didn't realize how much it hurt, until I remembered what joy feels like." Michael leaned back, silent but attentive. His face wasn't defensive, it was pained, like he had just discovered he'd been holding something fragile without knowing it was breaking. "I didn't know you felt that way," he whispered. "I didn't know either," she admitted. "But now I do. And I don't want to stay asleep in my own life." Michael lowered his eyes. "I got comfortable. I thought giving you stability was enough. I didn't see that you needed more." Emily reached out, placing her hand over his. It was the first small gesture of closeness between them in months. "I don't need grand gestures. I just want us to choose each other again. To live again, not just exist." Michael swallowed hard. "I want that too. I don't want to lose you." His words softened something inside her. She wasn't looking for perfection. She didn't want to run away. She wanted effort, connection, life. That night, they talked for hours. It wasn't a magical fix. It wasn't a sudden transformation. It was simply the first honest conversation they'd had in years. Michael asked questions. Emily shared truths. They both admitted fears they had ignored. Daniel didn't come between them. He opened a door she had forgotten existed, a door to herself. Later, as Emily lay beside Michael, she felt something unfamiliar: hope. Not the weak kind, but the quiet, steady kind that grows slowly, like the first warm day after a long winter. For the first time in a long time, she believed they could rebuild. She believed they could learn to live, laugh, and love again, not in dramatic ways, but in real ones. Emily didn't waste time anymore. She had found her voice, and she was ready to use it, not to leave her life, but to breathe new life into it.